early childhood memories. As a baby, I recall wanting a hammer, and my mother said it was not for me. But I was a baby. I crawled to it no matter where they put it. They put it high up on a bookcase shelf. But I climbed to get that hammer. My parents, they were so flabbergasted and they gave up, finally putting it outside a door that I could not open. And so I sat by that door. I wanted my hammer. I think this early story of my determination and unwavering, relentless drive to achieve my goals would prove to be a hallmark throughout my entire life. I will have my hammer. Dr. Caselli smiled. You identify as relentless and felt a need to complete your goals. That is interesting, Richard. Please continue. I nodded, albeit a little sarcastically, I felt to myself, acknowledging Caselli's non-specific alleged insight. It was a puzzling thing to know when or even if these doctors can tell when I'm suppressing my attitude and resentment towards them for letting me remain in this ludicrous psych ward situation, and worse, for taking a salary to hold me hostage unfairly. It seemed to me my contempt was either invisible to the doctors most of the time, or they simply did not care that I resented them and my captivity, and frankly, the powerlessness they put me in. Unwavering in my goals has always been a hallmark of my determination. Being that way since birth, even for things as abstract as faith, morality, and integrity. I've always been that way. I am not sure what inspired me to protect people and pursue what is right. It had been in me since I was a toddler, probably since I was born. My sisters were afraid of a spider near a toilet once, I remember, so I grabbed a fly swatter and I charged to kill it regardless of my little tiny age or the threat it might represent to me. It just didn't matter. I didn't think that way. It has always just been in me to protect and do good, no matter what the cost, no matter what the risk. In a way, I think I was born to be a knight, or a knight errant, to quest across the world to root and defeat evil. Just in modern times, well, that kind of means I just have to act with chivalry and pursue justice and help others where I can, challenge evil whenever and however I can. That's just not the same way being a knight as such, I guess. Dr. Caselli smiled again. So you began at your earliest memories seeing yourself as a heroic figure that should protect others. That is an admirable sentiment, Richard. But it is also the root of lawlessness and vigilantism. Thinking you are the law, that you have the right to enforce justice, and you are righteous, Richard, can justify a multitude of bad, abusive, and destructive decisions and actions. It will be enlightening to understand more as you share your childhood with us, Richard, and your young adult memories. How often such ideations of knighthood and chivalry emerge will be telling, and how they influenced your decisions, your actions, and behaviors, possibly a core of your very identity and corresponding life perspective and attitude. My hope, Richard, is we will go on this journey as a team. You, Doctors Brandon, Garcia, Hyder, and myself. We will delve into your history, young and old. We will shine a light on the formative moments and how they may have influenced your late life misadventures and your ultimate racist murder of a black man. Again, there he went with murdering a black man. I was so offended, so often, so much by this doctor's assertion that my being chivalrous and helping others in righteous causes made me somehow a scofflaw, vigilante, bad person. It was inconceivable to imagine a world so lost that doing good for others was actually interpreted as the wrong thing to do. I absolutely cannot accept such backwards thinking, no matter what the doctors may tell me to think. And why does Caselli keep saying it was a racist murder? That I'm a racist murderer? I could only surmise because he was black himself and had a social chip on his shoulder, but that would make him a very petty, renowned, and highly educated senior psychiatrist and neurologist. Well, I guess education and practicing with the brain doesn't make you a better person. But regardless of why Caselli seemed so judgmental of me, I knew always, it seemed, that if I argued, he and the other doctors would dismiss my words as merely further evidence of my lacking self-awareness and inability to understand right from wrong. Moreover, apparently, if I argued against my being racist, Caselli would probably just repeat and declare that my saying so was merely further proof that I was racist. He might even say that I was ignorantly racist because of my white privilege growing up and working in a systemic racist system all around us and me. Oh yeah, Dr. Caselli was a liberal. I could tell. In fact, Dr. Caselli, I did not at first realize, is an extreme left liberal. I was not sure where on the left moderate right spectrum the other doctors, Hyder, Garcia, and Brandon, might be, but I could definitely tell they were and acted subordinate to Dr. Caselli, and if they were subordinate, they were unlikely to ever oppose him. In other words, the doctors would all gang up on me and use anything I said against me. I have concluded that they would twist any defense that I have made for chivalry and righteousness and being good and helping other people, that it's the right thing, that everyone should do the same thing, much less that I should only be doing it, and yet I know that they would disapprove. Their actions discouraged my being totally open and talkative with them, which is in fact my normal and transparent, rather verbose way. I think people would say I talked too much. However, for them, it was easier just to be quiet and let things pass forward. Instead, I felt encouraged to be silent, to reduce those conflicts and any more negative judgments against me. And so, my usual way, I nodded, sarcastically internally, and acknowledged the doctor's wisdom with that nod, and just continued sharing my memories. As a little kid, I had a strong lisp, and I was very shy. My sisters made fun of me, but there was nothing I could do about it because I spoke with a lisp. I could not make a ch sound either, so my name Richard, or Richie, as a kid, was Rishie. My name was Rishie, the shy, lisp, tiny little kid. And as a little kid, I was thin and small. My body had not yet found itself. Though small, as a little kid, preteen, I would later blossom into a fairly big and hefty teenager, and I continued that way well into adulthood. I moderately managed my weight as an adult over the decades in bouts of fluctuating weight, I suppose, as many people do when they are overweight. Much later, in my mid-40s, early 50s, I had lost a lot of weight on what I had joked was the banana diet. When I first began losing weight, I declared my evening dinner of eating 1 to 3 bananas was a miracle dietary plan. I lost 5 to 7 pounds every single week. Sometimes a little more. I had lost 63 pounds in record speed, then another 10 after that. It just didn't stop. I lost so much weight that I became emaciated, gaunt, looking like I was cancer-stricken, frail. I looked suddenly so old, wither-cheeked, decrepit. I lost weight so fast that the doctor said it caused me to develop a hernia that I ultimately needed surgery for. and all sorts of other maladies. Apparently my innards, my guts were shifting around because I lost so much weight so fast that the normal packing was just not there. Things weren't able to settle safely and securely in my new lower weight body. So apparently losing weight actually harmed my health and was killing me. Well, to remedy my uncontrolled weight loss, I forced myself to eat 5,000 to 10,000 calories a day. Yes, thousands and thousands of calories every single day. I ate sweets and pastas and chips, which should be terrible for a diabetic. I've been type 2 diabetic for a long time, but my blood sugar was largely unaffected. It just did not matter what I ate. Only with super dense protein energy shakes was I able to very gradually regain just a little bit of weight over years. I came to realize that my weight had become independent of anything I did, ate, drank, exercise, or not. I presumed it was related to my neurological degeneration once that had been diagnosed. And here we are. I eat so many calories I have no idea anymore, but my weight is largely stable. My blood sugar is largely stable. Kind of odd. Dr. Brandon spoke up from his little iPad window. "Excuse me, Richard. You are off topic. Let's get back on track with your childhood. Why did you connect or segue from your childhood memory of lisp, Rishie, to your older weight loss and degraded health?" Well, Brandon had an interesting point. Why did I jump from being a toddler with a lisp, little Rishie, to an emaciated dying adult of cancer or something? It was curious. I could only imagine my leap from childhood to late 40s and health was the obvious connection. Well, weight. My weight was extreme. I went from tiny to hefty to tiny again. That seemed like it was obvious. I felt it was probably the unquestionable correlation, and it was just a contrast of the two. Thin, small, shy, vulnerable, versus growing up to become powerhouse physically and mentally, and then devolving into a weak and vulnerable again, just like a little child. I was an addled, gaunt, enfeebled waif of an old man. So I answered Dr. Brandon, "Well, I think it is because as a kid, I felt especially tiny and vulnerable. My entire life was uncertain. Living in a car, not knowing when and what my next meal might be. I think I have a lot of stuff to share there too, maybe later." I could see the doctors were unreceptive to my obvious connection of weight, and so I shifted my tact a little bit and added some more, maybe texture that they would appreciate as an additional possibility. So I think my connection from when I was a kid to later being in, my 40s, maybe it's not just about my weight as I think about it. Maybe it could also be representative of, I guess, I felt scared and afraid as a kid. And I overcame that with a vengeance as an adult. But somehow as I aged and my body declined, so did my confidence. So I guess in a weird way, I have devolved back into truly being that very vulnerable child I was. I'm just now a vulnerable adult child. Dr. Brandon's iPad window sputtered and stalled a little bit as he spoke, apparently suffering a lagging internet connection. He sighed loudly through the iPad. "That is insightful, Richard. Seeing emotional and psychological attributions in your memories, as opposed to that literal interpretation of weight loss, is unusual and impressive. Please continue." It was apparent the doctors preferred my "I was a scared little child" narrative Much more than I was super small, then super big, then super small, and I had therefore the corresponding weights of small, big, small. I guess that's just too obvious. I could only imagine the doctor panel was much more interested in psychological reasons as opposed to physical, real-world reasons. Usually, possibly, the more obvious and truthful ones. I continued. We never had soda, and even Kool-Aid. That was rare. But during a neighbor's party, they had both. But I did not want any of it, which was really unlikely. Not because of my shyness, but because it burned my throat to try to drink it. It hurt so much to drink anything. But because I was shy, I just accepted that swallowing and throat pain was the way it was. I wasn't going to complain. However, because I declined soda and Kool-Aid, despite their rarity for me, my mother decided I must be sick. Reactively, a neighbor put their hand on my forehead and declared I had a very high fever and may even need to see a doctor or even a hospital soon. The neighbor was really alarmed how hot I really was. My mother, pressured socially to address my apparent sickness, took me to an emergency center and a hospital because, well, we had no insurance and we had no money, and the hospital was bound under Good Samaritan laws to give me care. It turned out I had scarlet fever, and they diagnosed that I was likely to die in that hospital. Days later, I was home on antibiotics. It was said to be a miracle that I lived. This early malady seemed to be a hallmark of many to come my way throughout my life's hell difficulty. Dr. Brandon's iPad window pulsed as he began speaking again. If I may, Richard, you described your mother as taking you to the hospital due to social pressure, not because she was shown that you needed medical attention. Your choice of words seems to place you as a victim of an irresponsible, derelict, unloving mother. None of those sound particularly trusting or able to rely on your mother to take care of you. Did I pick up incorrectly your thoughts and feelings here, Richard? Well, the truth is that my mother has always strived to do right by her children, I said. And she would sacrifice her life for any one of us. But she has also always been emotionally weak and conflicted with spending versus saving, if she even had any money to save or spend. Taking me to the doctor would cost money and time, and not earning money, getting to and from the doctor, covering any meals, drinks, fares, fuel, to get there, to drive, a bus, anything, just the route will cost money and time. And that's all things while everyone's away from home. And what happens to my sisters in that? Do they come? More money? Do they stay? I don't know. When you're scraping by every single day, it's important you understand that a sick kid is just one thing that's going to happen. And if you have 3 kids, you've got 3 potential sick kids and other issues every single day. So did my mother fail to recognize how sick I was? Yes. Did my mother reluctantly take me to the hospital? Yes. Did my mother feel bad after I was diagnosed with a probability of dying? Yes, obviously. Was my mother derelict and irresponsible? No. You had to be there. It is impossible to know all the horrors that went on in her life and the multitude of challenges she had faced, was facing then, and feared would yet face alone with 3 tiny children. So no, my mother was not derelict. She was not irresponsible, given the situation she and we were in. She did the best she could in a very bad situation. She did make terrible choices in her life that put her in the situation, that put us in the situation. But that was the situation. And in that moment, her actions in that time, they were appropriate. Dr. Brandon appeared a little shocked at my vehemence and defensive reply to his very loaded question about my mother being fundamentally a bad parent. He spoke. "I see, Richard. I did not mean to insult you or your mother. I just observed your wording and wondered if it might suggest a perspective towards your mother that might merit discussion. I can see this is not a topic that we should press at this time. Can we move on, Richard?" I nodded and continued.